The red warning lights flashed across the command center as Admiral Jake Morrison walked quickly to his station. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor as dozens of officers worked at their screens around him. The big room hummed with quiet energy and the sound of fingers typing on keyboards. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission," said Commander Lisa Harper, looking up from her control panel. "It's coming from outside our solar system." Morrison nodded and moved to stand in front of the large screen at the front of the room. "Put it through, Commander." The screen flickered for a moment, then showed the image of something that was definitely not human. The creature had 6 arms, each one as thick as a tree branch. Its skin was a dark purple color, with strange marks covering its face. 2 large yellow eyes stared out from the screen, and when it opened its mouth, Morrison could see rows of sharp white teeth. "I am High Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Council," the alien said. Its voice came through the speakers in perfect English, though Morrison knew it was being translated by some kind of machine. "I speak for over 400 worlds and 15,000 star systems." Morrison crossed his arms and waited. He had been expecting this call for weeks, ever since Captain Ben Carter and his crew had returned from their trip to the Kepler system. The aliens had not been happy about that meeting. "Humans of the planet Earth," Vextar continued, his voice getting louder with each word. "Your species has broken our laws. You have entered star systems that belong to the Galactic Council. You have built colonies where you should not build. You have taken resources that are not yours to take." Around the command center, Morrison could see his officers looking at each other. Some of them were trying not to smile. The whole thing felt like watching an angry parent scolding a child. "You have ignored 17 treaties that your species never signed," Vextar went on. "You have crossed 43 territorial lines that your species never agreed to respect. You have shown that humans do not understand their place in this galaxy." Morrison stepped closer to the screen. "And what exactly is our place, Chancellor?" The alien's yellow eyes seemed to grow bigger. "Your place is to bow down to your betters. Your place is to ask permission before you leave your little planet. Your place is to follow the rules that have kept peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years. "I see," Morrison said calmly. "And what happens if we don't want to do that?" Vexatar raised all 6 of his arms high above his head. Behind him, Morrison could see other aliens standing in what looked like a huge meeting hall. All of them were different shapes and sizes, but they all had the same look of anger on their faces. "Then the Galactic Council declares war on the human race," Vextar shouted. "We have destroyed species that were stronger than you. We have burned worlds that were more advanced than yours. We have ended civilizations that had ruled space for thousands of years before your people even learned to make fire." The alien leaned forward until his face filled the entire screen. "You have 7 days to surrender all your colonies. You have 7 days to return to your home planet and never leave again. You have 7 days to accept that the Galactic Council is your master." Morrison looked around the room at his officers. Commander Harper was shaking her head slowly. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Bell, the tactical officer, was actually laughing quietly. Captain Susan Wright, who had just returned from the Mars shipyards, was rolling her eyes. "And if we don't surrender?" Morrison asked. "Then we will bring 2 million ships to your little solar system," Vextar hissed. "We will turn your planets into ash. We will make sure that no one in this galaxy ever remembers that humans existed. Your species will become nothing more than a warning to others who think they can challenge the Council." The screen went black. For a moment, the command center was completely quiet. Then someone in the back started to chuckle. The sound spread through the room until nearly everyone was laughing. "Sir," Commander Harper said, trying to keep her voice serious, "did they just threaten to destroy all of humanity because we didn't ask permission to explore space?" Morrison rubbed his forehead. The whole situation was so ridiculous that he almost wanted to laugh too. 3 months ago, humanity had sent the exploration ship UES Defiance to check out some interesting signals coming from the Kepler system. It was supposed to be a simple science mission. Instead, Captain Carter and his crew had discovered a monitoring station run by the Galactic Council. The aliens had been watching Earth for years, waiting for humans to develop space travel so they could be brought into the Council as a junior member species. The problem was that nobody had asked humanity if they wanted to join. When the council representatives had explained their rules and regulations, Captain Carter had listened politely. Then he had told them that humans weren't interested in following someone else's rules. When they had insisted that all space-traveling species had to join the council, Carter had politely but firmly told them no. The aliens had been shocked. Apparently, no species had ever said no to them before. To make his point clear, Carter had claimed 3 nearby star systems for Earth and had started setting up mining operations. He had done it all according to the laws that Earth's government had written for space exploration. He had not asked the council for permission. This had made the aliens very angry. "Get me President Martinez on the secure line," Morrison ordered, "and send a message to all our fleet commanders. Tell them we might have a situation." "What kind of situation, sir?" Lieutenant Colonel Bell asked. Morrison looked at the blank screen where the angry alien had been just moments before. "The kind where someone who has never lost a fight is about to pick one with someone who has never stopped fighting." "Sir," Commander Harper said, "they said they have 2 million ships." "They did say that," Morrison agreed. "And we have about 8,000 ships in our entire fleet." "That's correct." Harper waited for Morrison to say something else. When he didn't, she asked, "Doesn't that worry you, sir?" Morrison turned to look at all the officers in the command center. These were people who had grown up hearing stories about humanity's wars. They knew about the battles their ancestors had fought for freedom, for survival, for the right to choose their own destiny. They came from a species that had never met, a challenge it wouldn't accept or a fight it wouldn't finish. "Commander," Morrison said quietly, "has anyone ever told you what happened the last time someone tried to tell all of humanity what to do?" Harper thought about it for a moment. "Several very large wars, sir?" "Exactly," Morrison said. "And how did those wars usually end?" "With the people trying to control us learning not to do that anymore, sir." Morrison smiled. "Right again. So no, Commander, I'm not worried about their 2 million ships. I'm worried about them." Around the room, the other officers were nodding. They understood what their admiral was saying. The Galactic Council thought they were threatening a weak, primitive species that would surrender at the first sign of trouble. They had no idea they had just declared war on humanity. "Sir," Captain Wright called out from her station, "I'm getting reports from all our colony worlds. The news about the Council's ultimatum is spreading fast." "And how are the colonies responding?" Morrison asked. Wright checked her screen again. "Well, sir, the colony on New Texas just sent a message saying, and I quote, 'Let them come.' The mining station at Alpha Centauri is asking for more weapons, and the research base on Kepler Prime wants to know if they can keep the alien monitoring equipment they captured." Morrison laughed. That sounded about right. Humans had been spreading across the galaxy for 20 years now, building homes on distant worlds and creating new lives among the stars. They weren't about to give all that up because some aliens with too many arms told them to. "Open a channel to all human settlements," Morrison ordered. "It's time to let our people know what's happening." As the communication systems came online, Morrison thought about what he was going to tell them. The truth was simple. An alien empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years had just made the mistake of threatening humanity's freedom. They were about to learn why that was a very bad idea. President Maria Martinez stood at the podium in the Great Hall of the United Earth Assembly. The room was packed with representatives from every human colony and settlement across 47 star systems. Behind her, a massive screen showed a map of human space with tiny dots of light marking each world where people had made their homes among the stars. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall and across the communication networks to every human settlement. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council delivered an ultimatum to our species. They have demanded that we abandon our colonies, return to Earth, and accept their rule over us. A low murmur ran through the assembly. Some people shook their heads, others looked angry. A few actually laughed. "They have given us 4 more days to surrender," Martinez continued. "They have threatened to bring 2 million ships to destroy us if we refuse. They believe that because they are bigger and older, we will simply give up everything we have built." She paused and looked out at the faces in the crowd. These were people who had left Earth to build new lives on distant worlds, They had faced the dangers of space travel, the challenges of building cities on alien planets, and the loneliness of being far from home. They were not the kind of people who gave up easily. "They are wrong about us," Martinez said firmly. "They do not understand what it means to be human." In the front row, General Kyle Roberts stood up. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a combat engineer. "Madam President," he said, "our intelligence teams have been studying the Council for the past 3 months. What we have learned is both good news and bad news." Martinez nodded. "Tell us, General." Roberts activated his data pad, and numbers appeared on the big screen behind the president. "The bad news is that they were not lying about their size. The Galactic Council controls approximately 15,000 star systems. Their combined military forces include over 2 million ships of various sizes. They have been the dominant power in this galaxy for over 1,000 years." The room was quiet as people absorbed this information. 2 million ships against humanity's small fleet seemed like an impossible challenge. "And the good news?" Martinez asked. Roberts smiled. "The good news is that they have never fought anyone like us. Our analysis shows that the Council relies on 3 main tactics. First, they use overwhelming numbers to frighten their enemies into surrender. Second, they make threats and demands, expecting other species to obey out of fear. Third, when they do fight, they use massive, slow-moving ships designed to destroy planets and space stations." Dr. Amanda Price, the head of the Xenobiology department, stood up from her seat. She was a small woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "If I may add to the General's report, Madam President." "Please do, Doctor." "Our studies of captured Council technology show that they have not innovated in centuries," Price explained. "Their ships are powerful but inefficient. Their weapons are large but slow. Their tactics have not changed because they have never needed to change them. Every species they have encountered has either surrendered immediately or been easily crushed by their superior numbers." She touched her data pad, and new images appeared on the screen. They showed sleek human ships next to bulky alien vessels. "Our ships are smaller, faster, and more maneuverable," Price continued. "Our weapons are more accurate and can be fired more quickly. Most importantly, our people are trained to think independently and adapt to changing situations. The Council's forces are used to following orders and overwhelming their enemies through brute force." President Martinez looked around the room. "What you are telling us, Doctor, is that they are used to fighting enemies who think like them." "Exactly," Price said with a slight smile. "They have never fought humans before. They do not understand how we think, how we fight, or how we adapt to challenges." In the back of the room, Captain Ben Carter raised his hand. He was the commander of the UES Defiance, the ship that had made first contact with the Council. "Madam President, I've seen how they react when things don't go according to their plans. When I told them we weren't interested in joining their council, they seemed genuinely confused. When I claimed those 3 star systems for Earth, they acted like I had broken some law of nature." Martinez nodded. "What is your assessment, Captain?" "They expect us to be afraid," Carter said simply. "They expect us to surrender or fight like every other species they have conquered. They do not expect us to do something completely different." "And what would that be?" Martinez asked. Carter grinned. "When?" The assembly hall erupted in applause and cheers. When the noise died down, Martinez raised her hand for silence. "General Roberts," she said, "what is the status of our military preparations?" Roberts consulted his data pad again. "All fleet commanders have been notified of the situation. Our newest ships, the Titan-class dreadnoughts, are being deployed to key systems. We have 12 of them operational, with 6 more coming online within the next 2 weeks." "What about our colonies?" Martinez asked. "That is where the situation gets interesting, Madam President," Roberts replied. "Our colony administrators have been remarkably creative in their responses to the Council's threat." New images appeared on the screen showing various human settlements across the galaxy. On New Texas, Colony Administrator Tony Clark has converted civilian mining equipment into orbital defense platforms, Roberts explained. The mining lasers designed to cut through asteroids are being retrofitted as anti-ship weapons. The cargo haulers used to transport ore are being equipped with missile launchers. The image changed to show a busy shipyard orbiting a blue and green planet. On New California, Chief Engineer Susan Wright has begun what she calls the Emergency Retrofit Program. Every civilian ship in the system is being equipped with military-grade weapons and armor. Cargo vessels are becoming gunships. Passenger liners are becoming troop transports. Even the small personal shuttles are being fitted with weapons. Martinez looked impressed. How long will these conversions take? Most of them are already complete, Roberts answered. It turns out that human civilian technology adapts very well to military purposes. Our mining equipment is already designed to break things apart. Our cargo ships are already built to carry heavy loads over long distances. Our communication systems are already secure and reliable. Dr. Price stood up again. If I may, Madam President, there is something else the Council does not understand about humans. What is that, Doctor? They think in terms of species and planets, Price explained. They see the universe as territory to be controlled and populations to be managed. But humans think differently. We think in terms of families and communities. We fight not just for our species, but for our homes, our children, our way of life. She gestured toward the screen showing human colonies scattered across space. Every single human settlement out there is not just a colony or a military outpost. It is home to thousands of people who have built lives, raised families, and created communities. The Council is not just threatening humanity as a species. They are threatening every human home in the galaxy. Martinez nodded slowly. And that makes us more dangerous than they realize. Much more dangerous, Price agreed. A soldier fighting for conquest might retreat when the odds are bad. A soldier fighting for pay might surrender when the cost is too high. But a parent fighting to protect their children will never give up, no matter what the odds. General Roberts cleared his throat. Madam President, there is one more thing. We have been monitoring Council communications since their ultimatum. Their fleet movements suggest they are planning to attack our outer colonies first, probably, thinking that losing a few settlements will convince us to surrender. And will it? Martinez asked. Roberts smiled grimly. Madam President, they are about to attack communities full of people who left Earth to build new lives in the most dangerous environment imaginable. These are not people who scare easily. What do our colony commanders say about the threat? Martinez asked. Roberts checked his datapad one more time. Colony Administrator Clark on New Texas sent a message that said, "We didn't come all this way to run away from a fight." Chief Engineer Wright on New California said, "Let them come and see what happens." And Captain Miller on the Kepler Prime Research Station said, "We have work to do. They can wait their turn." President Martinez looked out at the assembly hall full of representatives from across human space. These people had chosen to leave the safety of Earth to explore the unknown. They had built cities on worlds where no human had ever walked. They had turned empty space into thriving communities. The Council believes that bigger numbers always win, she said finally. They believe that threats and fear will make us surrender. They believe that because they have conquered hundreds of other species, they can conquer us too. She paused and smiled. They are about to learn that humans are not like other species. We did not come to space to bow down to someone else's empire. We came to space to be free, and we will fight for that freedom with everything we have. The assembly hall erupted in cheers again. When the noise finally died down, Martinez raised her hand one last time. "Send a message to all human settlements," she ordered. "Tell them that Earth stands with them." Captain Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, watching the empty space beyond Proxima Centauri through the main viewing screen. His ship was one of the new Titan-class dreadnoughts, built specifically for deep space combat. Around him, 29 other human ships waited in formation, their crews ready for whatever was about to happen. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell called out from his tactical station, "long-range sensors are picking up hyperspace distortions. Something big is coming." Foster nodded calmly. They had been expecting this. Intelligence reports suggested that the Galactic Council would start their attack on humanity's outer colonies first. Proxima Centauri, with its small mining operation and research station, made a perfect target for the aliens to make their point. "How many ships, Bell?" Foster asked. Bell studied his instruments carefully. "I count 500 vessels, sir. They're all big ones, probably their standard battle cruisers." Around the bridge, Foster could see his crew exchanging glances. 500 ships against 30 was not good odds by anyone's standards. But these were humans who had volunteered to defend the colonies. They knew what they were getting into. "Communications. Open a channel to all ships in our fleet," Foster ordered. "Channel open, sir," replied Communications Officer Janet Stone. "This is Captain Foster to all ships," he said calmly. "In a few minutes, we're going to face 500 enemy vessels. They outnumber us by more than 16 to 1. They think this will be easy." He paused and looked around at his bridge crew. They were all young, all volunteers, all ready to fight for humanity's right to exist in space. "They're wrong," Foster continued. "We're not here to win by numbers. We're here to show them that humans don't give up, don't back down, and don't surrender. Every one of you volunteered to be here. Every one of you knew the odds. Every one of you chose to stand and fight anyway." "Sir," Bell interrupted, "they're dropping out of hyperspace now." The main screen flickered and suddenly space was filled with alien ships. They were huge, each one easily 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. Their hulls were dark and covered with weapon ports. They moved slowly but with obvious power, like ancient fortresses floating through space. Foster had to admit, they were impressive. If he had been any other species in the galaxy, he probably would have been terrified. "Incoming transmission, sir," Stone reported. "Put it through." The screen changed to show an alien face that was even uglier than High Chancellor Vextar. This creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its head, and its mouth was full of teeth that looked like broken glass. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "I am War Commander Thexval of the Galactic Council," the alien announced. "You are Captain Foster of the primitive human species. I have come to destroy your pathetic colony as an example to the rest of your kind." Foster stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "War Commander, you are trespassing in human space. I'm ordering you to withdraw immediately." Thexval made a sound that might have been laughter. "Foolish human, look around you. I have 500 ships. You have barely 30. Your weapons are inferior. Your ships are small and weak. You cannot possibly stand against the might of the Council." "Maybe not," Foster admitted. "But we're going to try anyway." The alien's 4 eyes widened with what looked like confusion. "You cannot be serious. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue this foolishness and I will make sure your colony suffers before it burns." Foster looked at Bell, who was trying hard not to smile. Then he looked at Stone, who was shaking her head in disbelief. Finally, he looked at his pilot, Lieutenant Kevin Price, who was actually grinning. "War Commander," Foster said politely, "did you just threaten to hurt innocent people to make a point?" "Of course," Thexval replied. "Fear is a powerful weapon. Your species will learn to obey when they see what happens to those who resist." Foster nodded slowly. "I see. Well, War Commander, let me explain something to you about humans. We have a saying on Earth. It goes like this. You can threaten us, you can outnumber us, you can have bigger ships and more powerful weapons. But the moment you threaten innocent people, you stop being an enemy and become something much worse." "And what is that?" Thexval asked. Foster's expression turned cold. "You become a target." He turned to Bell. "All weapons lock onto the War Commander's flagship. All ships prepare for combat. Remember your training and remember what we're fighting for." "You are insane," Thexval snarled. 500 ships will crush you like insects." "Maybe," Foster said. "But insects can sting. All ships engage at will." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The Council ships, designed for overwhelming firepower against large, slow targets, found themselves facing an enemy that fought in a completely different way. The human ships scattered immediately, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the massive energy blasts from the alien weapons. They moved like dancers through space, weaving between the council vessels and striking at weak points in their formation. Foster watched from the bridge of the Relentless as his tactical plan unfolded perfectly. The human ships worked in groups of 3, coordinating their attacks through secure communication channels. One ship would draw the enemy's attention, while the other 2 attacked from different angles. Bell, target their engine sections. Foster ordered. Stone, send a message to all ships, tell them to focus on mobility kills. We don't need to destroy them all, just stop them from maneuvering. The battle turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse. The council ships had more firepower, but they could not hit targets that moved too quickly for their weapons to track. The human ships had less armor, but they were fast enough to avoid most of the incoming fire. Lieutenant Price piloted the Relentless through a complex series of maneuvers, using the gravity of Proxima Centauri to slingshot around council ships and attack them from behind. Other human captains were doing the same thing, turning the star system itself into a weapon. "Sir," Bell reported, "we've disabled 15 enemy ships. They're starting to bunch up in defensive formations." Foster smiled. That was exactly what he had hoped they would do. Bunched up, the council ships could not maneuver effectively, and they were blocking each other's lines of fire. "All ships execute attack pattern Delta," Foster ordered. The human fleet suddenly changed direction, diving straight toward the center of the council formation. It looked like a suicide run, but Foster was counting on the aliens not understanding. Human tactics. At the last second, the human ships scattered in all directions, each one firing at a different target as they passed through the enemy formation. The council ships, bunched together for mutual protection, could not return fire without risking hitting their own vessels. "Direct hit on the flagship," Bell reported with satisfaction. "Their engines are down." On the main screen, Foster could see War Commander Thexval's ship drifting helplessly as other council vessels tried to protect it. But the human ships were already gone, regrouping for another attack run. "Sir," Stone called out, "I'm receiving surrender requests from 12 council ships. They want to withdraw from the battle." Foster considered this. In 18 minutes of fighting, his 30 ships had disabled or destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. The rest were either damaged or retreating to defensive positions. "Let them go," he decided. "Our job is to protect the colony, not to hunt down every enemy ship." As the surviving council ships began to withdraw, Foster opened a communication channel to Thexval's crippled flagship. "War Commander," he said, "you're beaten. Your ship is disabled and most of your fleet is destroyed or retreating. Do you surrender?" Thexval's image appeared on the screen. 3 of his 4 eyes were dark, probably from injuries sustained when his ship was hit. His voice was weak and confused. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We had 500 ships. We had superior firepower. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. How could 30 primitive vessels defeat us?" Foster looked around his bridge at the crew members who had just won an impossible victory. They were tired, some were injured, but they were all smiling. "War Commander," Foster said gently, "you made the same mistake that bullies always make. You assumed that being bigger and stronger meant you would automatically win, but you forgot something important." "What?" Thexval asked weakly. "You forgot that sometimes the little guy fights back. And when he does, he fights harder, smarter, and more fiercely than you ever imagined possible." Foster ended the transmission and turned to his communications officer. "Stone, send a message to Earth. Tell them that Proxima Centauri is secure. Tell them that humanity's first battle with the Galactic Council is over." "What should I say about our losses, sir?" Stone asked. Foster looked at the tactical display. 2 human ships had been destroyed and several others were damaged. Against 500 enemy vessels, they had achieved the impossible. "Tell them we lost 2 ships," Foster said, "but we saved our people. We protected our home, and we sent a message to the Council that they won't soon forget." As the human fleet began rescue operations for the crews of disabled Council ships, Foster stood quietly on his bridge and looked out at the stars. Word of this battle would spread quickly through both human and alien space. News of the victory at Proxima Centauri spread through human space faster than any ship could travel. Communication relays carried the message from colony to colony, and within hours, every human settlement in the galaxy knew that 30 human ships had defeated 500 Council vessels. But the news also reached the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vextar stood in the Great Council chamber, his 6 arms trembling with rage as he read the battle reports. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their assigned seats, all of them staring at the impossible numbers on the display screens. 500 ships, Vextar repeated for the 3rd time. War Commander Thexval had 500 ships and he was defeated by 30 primitive human vessels. Council member Zekran, a tall creature with gray skin and too many joints in his arms, raised one hand nervously. High Chancellor, perhaps we underestimated the humans. Maybe we should reconsider our approach. Vextar's yellow eyes focused on the speaker with deadly intensity. Are you suggesting that we negotiate with these primitives? Are you saying that the Galactic Council, which has ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years, should bow down to a species that has barely learned to leave their home planet? Zekran quickly lowered his hand. No, High Chancellor. I merely thought that perhaps a larger force might be necessary. A larger force, Vextar repeated slowly. Yes. Clearly Thexval failed because he did not bring enough ships. No primitive species can stand against the full might of the Council. He activated the command console in front of him, and new images appeared on the chamber's main display. They showed massive shipyards throughout Council space, each one building vessels for the galaxy's largest military force. Send orders to all fleet commanders, Vextar announced. I want 10,000 ships assembled at the nexus point. 10,000 of our largest, most powerful vessels. We will end this human rebellion once and for all. While the Council prepared for their massive assault, humanity was not sitting still. Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the defense from Earth's orbital command center. But the real action was happening throughout human space as ordinary people prepared to defend their homes. On New Texas, Colony Administrator Tony Clark stood in the control room of what had once been a civilian mining station. Now it bristled with improvised weapons and sensor arrays, all of them pointed toward the edges of the star system. How many defense platforms do we have operational? Clark asked his chief engineer. 47, sir, Engineer Bob Martinez replied. All of them armed with converted mining lasers. They're not military grade, but they'll punch holes in anything that gets too close. Clark nodded and looked at the tactical display showing his system's defenses. It wasn't much compared to a real military installation, but it was what they had built with their own hands using equipment designed for peaceful purposes. What about the early warning network? Clark asked. Fully operational, Martinez answered. We've got sensor buoys placed throughout the system. If anything larger than a cargo hauler enters our space, we'll know about it immediately. Meanwhile, in the workshop levels of the orbital station, dozens of colonists worked around the clock to modify whatever they could find. Mining robots were being converted into mobile weapons platforms. Cargo containers were being fitted with engines and turned into improvised missiles. Even the small personal shuttles that families used to travel between the station and the planet's surface were being equipped with weapons. Clark watched the organized chaos and smiled. These were people who had left Earth to build new lives on a frontier world. They were miners, farmers, engineers, and shop owners. They were not soldiers, but they were ready to fight for their homes. On New California, Chief Engineer Susan Wright faced a different challenge. Her colony was one of humanity's major industrial centers, with massive shipyards that produced vessels for the civilian merchant fleet. Now those shipyards were working overtime to convert peaceful ships into weapons of war. How many cargo haulers have we retrofitted? Wright asked her assistant engineer Tim Johnson. 237 so far, Johnson replied, consulting his data pad. We've stripped out the cargo space and installed weapon systems, armor plating, and military-grade shields. They're not pretty, but they can fight. Wright looked through the workshop's viewing window at the shipyard beyond. Dozens of vessels floated in various stages of conversion. Ships that had been designed to carry supplies between colonies were being transformed into gunships. Passenger liners that had transported families to new homes were becoming troop carriers. What about the mining ships? Wright asked. Those are almost ready, Johnson said with pride. The mining lasers are actually more powerful than most military weapons. We just had to add targeting systems and armor. A converted mining ship can cut through a council battlecruiser like it was made of paper. But the most important developments were happening in the deep space between human colonies, where Captain Sarah Rodriguez commanded a small fleet of reconnaissance ships on a dangerous mission. Her job was to scout Council territory and gather intelligence about their military preparations. Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt, studying the sensor readings from the alien star system they were observing. What she had discovered was both disturbing and encouraging. "Lieutenant Adams," she called to her intelligence officer, "what's the status of that Council fleet we've been tracking?" Lieutenant Carol Adams looked up from her analysis station. 10,000 ships confirmed, Captain. They're assembling at what appears to be a major staging area. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a massive assault on human space. Rodriguez nodded grimly. 10,000 ships was a serious threat, much larger than anything humanity had faced before. But she had also discovered something else during her reconnaissance missions. What about the other species in this system? Rodriguez asked. Adams checked her notes. According to our scans, the planet below is inhabited by a species called the Zelani. They appear to be one of the Council's subject races. Subject races? Rodriguez asked. Yes, Captain. From what we can determine, the Galactic Council doesn't actually represent the species that belong to it. They conquer other species and then force them to provide ships, resources, and soldiers for the Council's military. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying that the Council's fleet is made up of ships from conquered species? That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain. The Zelani provide mining ships and industrial support. The Kronar provide heavy fighters. The Vexians provide battle cruisers. Each conquered species is forced to contribute to the Council's war machine. Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet. Suddenly, the situation looked very different. The Council wasn't just an empire fighting to maintain its power. It was a system of oppression that enslaved entire species and forced them to fight for their captors. Adams, can we make contact with the Zelani without alerting the Council monitoring stations? Rodriguez asked. I think so, Captain. Their communications are heavily monitored, but we might be able to establish a secure channel. Do it, Rodriguez ordered. I want to talk to them. An hour later, Rodriguez found herself looking at the face of a Zelani representative on her communication screen. The alien was roughly humanoid, but with blue-green skin and large, intelligent eyes. When it spoke, its voice was filled with hope and desperation. You are humans, the Zelani said in heavily accented English. We have heard of your victory at Proxima Centauri. Is it true that you defeated a Council fleet? It's true, Rodriguez confirmed. But why does that matter to you? Because, for 300 years my people have been slaves of the Council, the Zelani replied. We are forced to provide ships and resources for their military. Our children are taken to serve on Council vessels. Our worlds are stripped of everything valuable to feed their war machine. Rodriguez felt her anger growing. How many species are in the same situation? Hundreds, the Zelani answered. The Council claims to represent 400 species, but most of us are not members. We are property. We are tools to be used and discarded. What would happen if the Council's control was broken? Rodriguez asked. The Zelani's eyes grew wide with something that might have been hope. If the Council fell, we could be free. We could govern ourselves, choose our own destiny, live without fear. Rodriguez looked around her bridge at her crew members. They were all listening to this conversation, and she could see the anger and determination growing in their faces. What if I told you that humans are planning to fight the Council? Rodriguez asked. What if I told you that we're not interested in conquering anyone, but we're very interested in setting people free? Then I would say that my people have been waiting 300 years for someone like you to come along, the Zelani replied. Rodriguez smiled. Then let's talk about how we can help each other. Over the next few days, Rodriguez and her team established contact with dozens of subjugated species throughout Council space. What they learned changed everything about humanity's approach to the war. The Galactic Council wasn't just an enemy to be defeated. It was a system of oppression, that had enslaved hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. The final battle began at the edge of the Galactic Council's capital system, where High Chancellor Vextar had assembled the largest fleet in the galaxy's recorded history. 10,000 council ships hung in space like a dark cloud, their massive hulls blocking out the light from distant stars. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Constitution, humanity's newest and most powerful dreadnought. Around him, the combined Liberation fleet stretched as far as his sensors could reach. 5,000 human ships flew alongside 3,000 vessels from freed alien species, each one crewed by people who had chosen to fight for freedom rather than serve the Council's oppression. "Admiral," Commander Lisa Harper reported from her station, "all fleet elements are in position. Human forces are ready. Allied forces are ready. The Liberation squadrons report they are standing by." Morrison nodded and looked at the tactical display. The Council fleet was impressive, but he could see the weakness that Captain Rodriguez had discovered during her reconnaissance missions. Many of those ships were crewed by enslaved species who had no choice but to fight for their captors. "Open a channel to all ships," Morrison ordered. "Channel open, sir," Harper confirmed. "This is Admiral Morrison to all fleet commanders," he began. "In a few minutes we will engage the largest military force this galaxy has ever seen. They outnumber us, they have bigger ships, and they believe that gives them an automatic victory." He paused and looked around his bridge at the crew, members who had volunteered for this mission. Behind them, President Maria Martinez stood quietly, having insisted on witnessing humanity's most important battle. "But we know something they don't," Morrison continued. "We know that half their fleet is made up of people who don't want to be there. We know that their enslaved crews are waiting for a chance to be free. And we know that free people, fighting for their homes and their families, are the most dangerous force in the universe." "Sir?" Harper interrupted. "Incoming transmission from the Council flagship. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed High Chancellor Vexitar standing in what appeared to be a massive command center. His 6 arms were spread wide, and his yellow eyes blazed with fury and confidence. "Admiral Morrison," Vexitar said, his translator, rendering his words in cold, precise English. "I am impressed that you managed to assemble such a fleet. 5,000 ships is more than any primitive species has ever gathered in one place." Morrison stepped forward. "Chancellor, I'm here to offer you one chance to surrender. Release all the enslaved species under your control, disband your military forces, and submit to trial for crimes against free peoples." Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. "You offer me surrender? Admiral, look at your sensors. I have 10,000 ships. You have barely 8,000, and half of yours are crewed by the same inferior species I have conquered before. Those inferior species chose to fight alongside us," Morrison replied calmly. "That makes them stronger than you can imagine." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "I have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. I have conquered hundreds of worlds. I have destroyed civilizations that were more advanced than your pathetic species. What makes you think you can stand against me?" Morrison looked at President Martinez, who nodded. Then he looked back at the alien leader whose empire was about to fall. "Chancellor," Morrison said quietly, "you made one critical mistake. You assumed that bigger is always better. You assumed that fear is stronger than hope. You assumed that people who are forced to fight will always lose to people who choose to fight. Your assumptions are about to be proven wrong." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Then let us end this. All ships attack. Destroy every human vessel. Show these primitives the price of defying the Council." The battle that followed would be remembered as the largest space combat in galactic history, but it was also the strangest. As the Council ships moved forward to attack, something unexpected began to happen. "Admiral," Harper called out, her voice filled with amazement. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations in the Council fleet. Ships are breaking formation." Morrison watched the tactical display as dozens, then hundreds of Council vessels suddenly changed course. Instead of attacking the Liberation fleet, they turned their weapons on other Council ships. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Janet Stone, "I'm receiving surrender transmissions from over 1,000 Council vessels. They're saying they want to join us. Morrison smiled. This was exactly what Captain Rodriguez had predicted. The enslaved crews who had been forced to serve the council were taking advantage of the chaos to rebel against their captors. All human ships, Morrison ordered. Do not fire on vessels that are surrendering. Focus your attacks on ships that are still under council control. The battle quickly turned into something that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Instead of two organized fleets fighting each other, it became a massive free-for-all as enslaved species throughout the council fleet rose up against their oppressors. The Zilani mining ships turned their powerful cutting lasers against council command vessels. Kronar heavy fighters began attacking the monitoring stations that had kept their crews under control. Vexian battlecruisers switched sides entirely, their alien crews choosing freedom over forced servitude. In the middle of the chaos, the human ships moved like surgeons through the confused battle, targeting the Council's command and control systems while protecting the rebelling alien vessels. Sir, Harper reported, the Council's flagship is trying to retreat toward the inner system. Morrison looked at the display and saw Vextar's massive ship attempting to flee the battle. Around it, the last ships still loyal to the Council were forming a protective screen. All ships pursue the flagship, Morrison ordered. Don't let him escape. The chase led through the Council's capital system, past worlds where billions of enslaved people lived under the Council's rule. As word of the rebellion spread, even the planetary populations began to revolt. Cities that had been forced to serve the Council for centuries suddenly declared their independence. Finally, Vexitar's flagship was cornered near the Council's government center, a massive space station that had served as the capital of their empire for 1,000 years. The alien leader's ship was surrounded by human vessels and rebel ships from dozens of species. Chancellor, Morrison broadcast, your fleet is destroyed or has joined us. Your empire is falling apart. Your enslaved species are free. Surrender, now and face trial or be destroyed. The response came quickly. Vextar appeared on the communication screen, but he looked very different from the confident leader who had started the battle. His 6 arms were shaking and his yellow eyes were filled with confusion and disbelief. This is impossible, he whispered. We ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. We conquered hundreds of species. We had the largest military force ever assembled. How could you defeat us? President Martinez stepped forward so that Vextar could see her. Chancellor, you want to know how we defeated you? Yes, Vextar said desperately. Tell me how primitives like you could destroy an empire like mine. Martinez looked around the bridge at the human crew members who had fought for their freedom and the freedom of others. Then she looked back at the alien leader whose reign of terror was finally ending. It's simple, she said. You ruled through fear, but we fought with hope. You conquered through force, but we liberated through choice. You demanded obedience, but we offered freedom. But most importantly, Morrison added, you never understood the most basic truth about intelligent life. People who choose to fight for something they believe in will always defeat people who are forced to fight for something they hate. Vextar stared at them for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would echo through history. That's it? He said weakly. That's all it took to destroy everything we built? Morrison nodded. That's it, Chancellor. That's all it took. The surrender came an hour later. Vextar's remaining forces laid down their weapons, and the Galactic Council's 1,000-year reign of oppression came to an end. 6 months later, the former council chambers had been converted into the meeting hall of the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. Representatives from over 400 species sat together as equals, each one governing their own worlds according to their own laws and customs. President Martinez stood at the podium where Vextar had once issued his demands and ultimatums. Behind her, a new flag hung from the ceiling. It showed stars scattered across a dark background, representing the freedom of all species to choose their own destiny among the stars. The Age of Empire is over, she announced to the assembled representatives. The Age of Freedom has begun. In the audience, Admiral Morrison sat next to Captain Foster and Captain Rodriguez, watching as humanity took its place not as conquerors, but as liberators. The galaxy would never be the same, and in the depths of space, human exploration ships continued their missions, carrying a simple message to any species they encountered. We come in peace, offering friendship and freedom. The choice is yours, the Yao. Galactic Council had learned too late that there are some forces in the universe that cannot be conquered, cannot be controlled, and cannot be defeated. The desire for freedom was one of them. Human stubbornness was another.